John's going to start it off.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Luke and I are going to be talking about some sensitive topics and mental health and substance abuse. And if anybody feels triggered by any of that from personal experience and you want to step out, feel free. You're not going to offend any of us. My cousin Luke, he stepped out to get some fresh air. He should be back like any moment. Hope everything's all right. Luke, where you been, man?
I was in the parking lot, and I just wake up, and all of a sudden my head is throbbing. All right, what are we doing here? I can't remember a thing. What?
We're here to talk to Miss O'Halloran's class. It's their emotional intelligence unit.
Okay.
We're here to talk to them about WWHW, our stories, give them some insight on how to set goals and really build resilience when it comes to everyday life. Does that ring a bell?
It's starting to come back to me a little. I mean, that sounds pretty good. It sounds like pretty interesting stuff. Why? Why are we doing this?
Because you and I, we love talking about our stories. We love helping others. We love preparing others to make positive change in their life and therefore have a positive impact on the world.
It sounds pretty heroic. It sounds cool. How are we doing this?
Well, first we're going to, break down our stories, our low points. Then we're going to get into how we got out of those low points to where we are today. We're going to break down a WWHW formula, which is a formula for implementing any positive change in your life. And then we're going to talk about references and their significance in building goals and accomplishing them.
Sounds pretty good to me. So, when are we doing this?
We're doing it right now. You're up.
Wait. Right now?
Right now.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
All right. So there I was in a pregame, sophomore year of college. About to leave, go out to where we party. But I had the great idea of taking out some cocaine out of my pocket, putting it on the table, putting a nice line for myself. Doing that, all of a sudden I look up. I'm like, oh, nobody else is here. I'm the last person here. With that, about to walk out the door, another spectacular idea. Why don't I get a beer, crack that open on my way out? So, grab my beer, start walking down the steps, get out to the street, and I'm going up the street towards campus, about to go around the corner. And as I turn, all of a sudden I see, boom, there's 3 police officers right in front of me. And all of a sudden, tons of things are going through my mind. I have a bag of cocaine in my pocket, I have a blunt rolled up. I already got in trouble with the police before my freshman year even started at Princeton during football camp. And so all I'm thinking about is, all right, what are the consequences going to be if something happens right now, if they catch me with this stuff? And so officer's like, hey, do you have an ID? I'm like, oh no, I don't have an ID. So he says, all right, go over there with those other 2 officers. And so I take a step towards them, and all of a sudden I go, boom! And I just book it. And so back then, I was a Division I football player at Princeton, so I had pretty good speed. Ended up, toasting this cop. And by the time I get away, I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just go get changed? Maybe throw a hat on and just go back out. It sounds like a good idea as well. So I do that, I get changed, I go back out, and I'm out at the party, getting more hammered, getting more messed up. At that point, I'm pretty blacked, but I'm like, I remember we were at this one place where we were partying, and we were going to this other. And you had to get on the list, and I was on the list, so one of my friends like, oh, I got you, I'm gonna get you in. Little did I know he forgot about me. But I'm waiting on the street, and all of a sudden, as I'm standing there, I see somebody's face that's right in front of me, just of sheer shock. And all of a sudden, I feel this really strong tug on my belt. And I just start trying to book it. And this guy, he's on my belt. And I'm just like, I don't know if you ever played some tackle football when you were younger in the park, but I'm just like swinging him by my hips like this, and he's just swinging around me. And all I can remember is I had this very quick moment in my head, and it was either I can take my hand and just rip through his arm and try to make a break for it, or just put my hands up and say, you know what, I've had enough. And I don't know what it was, but something came over me, and it was at that moment when I was like, all right, that's it. Put my hands up. The cop proceeded to take me down. He rolled me over. He rolled me on top of him, rolled me over, and all I remember is just laying there, my face in the rocks, and I look up, and there's hundreds of my fellow students just staring down at me.
All right, so there I was, right? It was the morning of September 18th, 2021. At this point in my life, I was really struggling with anxiety and depression. I woke up this morning and my dad and I had the idea of like, come on, John, like let's go to the gym. Let's try to get a workout in and see if you can, escape from your mind for a little bit. So I went to the gym. Instead of finding, peace and feeling good and getting a good workout in, I found myself in an all-out war inside my mind, right? It was as if two sides of my mind were playing tug of war, where the good side was, telling me to keep fighting, and the other side was telling me to give up. And for the first time in my life, I felt the good side starting to lose, right? In that tug of war match, the good side was starting to lose grip of the rope. And I remember being in the gym and just remembering how I was doing these workouts with such intensity because I was just feeling like I was fighting something on the inside of me. Right? We left the gym. I broke down the parking lot on the way to the car. And I told my dad, like, this is the hardest I've ever fought over anything in my entire life. He got home. He said, all right, let me make you a big breakfast. It made me some scrambled eggs, some potatoes, and some biscuits. And I remember him preparing this food for me sitting on my back deck and just not being able to touch it, not having an ounce of hunger, trying to force feed myself, but to no avail. I just could not eat. I could not stomach the food. And it was in that moment where I told my dad, I was like, listen, like, I don't know how much longer I can deal with these feelings. I don't know how much longer I can deal with these thoughts that I'm having. I think it's time for me to get some serious help. I was experiencing suicidal ideation. So I made the call to my mom, who was away on vacation at the time. And I said, Mom, I think it's time for me to go into the emergency room and really get this situation under control. So that's what we did. My dad and I hopped in the car. We drove 45 minutes south to a hospital in Westchester, in which I admitted myself into an inpatient care facility. Right? I found myself, sitting amongst about 20 other people who were going through similar battles. And I remember just sitting there in the hospital, no contact with the outside, no cell phone, just in complete shock and awe of how I just got to this point in my life, sitting there in an inpatient psychiatric center.